Story number 1. The Unoccupied Room. I've always believed that the world holds more mysteries than answers, and my experiences as a traveler have only reinforced that belief. But nothing could have prepared me for what I encountered one frigid winter night at the old Willow Creek Motel, a place that seemed to exist out of time, nestled on a desolate stretch of highway where the snow never seemed to end. It was late December, and I was driving through the heart of nowhere, the roads blanketed in fresh snow and the sky a perpetual shade of gray. My truck had been acting up for days, the engine sputtering and the heater barely working, making each mile feel colder than the last. I was exhausted, both physically and mentally, yearning for a warm bed and a hot meal after hours on the road. As the night grew darker, the only sign of civilization was the flickering neon sign of Willow Creek Motel, its red letters barely visible through the swirling snow. I pulled in, the gravel crunching under my tires, and stepped out into the biting cold. The wind howled like a living creature, rattling the windows of the motel's single-story building. I approached the front desk, the warmth from the office spilling out into the freezing night. An elderly man with a weathered face and tired eyes looked up from his paperwork. "Welcome to Willow Creek," he greeted me, his voice raspy from years of coughing. "Hi," I replied, shivering as the cold air enveloped me. "I need a room for the night." He glanced up, his eyes briefly meeting mine. "Sure thing. Room 13, if you don't mind the superstition around it." I chuckled nervously, brushing it off. "Superstition? What do you mean?" The man hesitated, then leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "They say room 13 is cursed. No one stays there for more than one night. Strange things happen. Guests report hearing noises, seeing shadows, and feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. Best to stick to room 12 or below." I raised an eyebrow, my curiosity piqued despite his warning. "Cursed? Huh? I'm not one to believe in that stuff. I'd like to take room 13. Please." He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "If you're sure, you're welcome to it. But just be cautious. Strange nights. Strange things." I nodded, taking the key from him. "Thanks. I'll take my chances." The corridor was dimly lit, the wallpaper peeling and the carpet worn from years of use. Room 13 was the last door on the left, its number flickering sporadically in the hallway light. I unlocked it and stepped inside, immediately noticing the oppressive silence that seemed to engulf the room. The bed was neatly made, the furniture old but functional, and the window framed a view of the snow-covered landscape outside. I set down my bags and decided to freshen up before settling in for the night. The bathroom was small, with a cracked mirror above the sink and a shower that had seen better days. As I splashed some water on my face, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Back in the room, I tried to ignore the unease gnawing at me. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulling out a book to distract myself. The wind outside howled louder now, and the motel seemed to groan under the weight of the storm. Hours passed uneventfully until the clock struck 1 in the morning. A faint tapping sound echoed through the room, rhythmic and deliberate. I froze, listening intently. The tapping continued, every hour on the hour, each knock sending a shiver down my spine. At 2 o'clock, the knocking resumed, more insistent this time. My heart raced as I wondered if it was just the storm or something more sinister. By 3, the tapping had become a relentless pattern, each knock punctuated by a heavy silence. Unable to bear it any longer, I decided to investigate. I grabbed my flashlight and cautiously approached the door. Taking a deep breath, I reached out and opened it, half expecting to find the attendant or another guest. But the hallway was completely empty, the snow now a gentle blanket covering the ground outside. Confused, I closed the door and returned to the bed, trying to rationalize the noise. Maybe it was just the wind, or the building settling in the cold. But as the night wore on, the knocking persisted, each one a stark reminder of the motel owner's warning. By dawn, exhaustion had taken its toll, and I decided to leave. eager to forget the unsettling experience of the night. As I packed my belongings, I glanced around the room one last time, feeling a lingering sense of unease. When I reached the bathroom mirror, something caught my eye. In the dim morning light, the words, "Thank you for letting me in," were smeared across the glass, written in what looked like blood. My blood ran cold as I stared at the message, my mind struggling to comprehend its meaning. Heart pounding, I wiped the mirror clean, hoping to erase the horrifying message. But the fear lingered, a heavy weight pressing down on me. I hurried out of the room, ignoring the stunned look from the attendant at the front desk. As I drove away from Willow Creek Motel, the image of the blood-written message burned into my memory. The storm had passed, leaving behind a calm morning, but the unease remained. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me, a ghostly presence tied to room 13. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about that night. I researched the motel, digging through old records and local news archives. What I found was a tragic story buried in the town's history. 2 decades ago, a young woman named Emily Turner had checked into room 13 on a stormy night. Much like mine, she was a traveler, stranded by the relentless winter storm. The night she stayed there, she vanished without a trace. No one saw her leave, and her disappearance remained a mystery, the room 13 gaining a reputation as cursed ever since. The motel owner had mentioned the curse, but no one had ever explained what exactly had happened to Emily. Some speculated foul play, while others believed it was a supernatural occurrence. But there was no concrete evidence, only the chilling accounts of those who dared to stay in room 13. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to return to Willow Creek Motel. This time during the day, the motel looked the same, its weathered facade standing against the test of time. The attendant, an older man now, greeted me with a weary smile. "I heard you had a rough night in room 13, he said, his eyes clouded with sadness. I nodded, showing him the photo of Emily Turner I had found in the archives. "What happened to her?" He sighed deeply, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Emily was a kind soul, lost in the storm just like you. That night, she never checked out, and neither did she leave. We searched everywhere, but there was no sign of her. Some say she's still here, trapped in room 13, unable to move on." I felt a pang of sympathy for her spirit. "Is there anything that can be done to help her?" The attendant shook his head. "We've tried everything, prayers, seances, even hiring a medium. Nothing has worked. Room 13 remains a place of sorrow and mystery." Determined to help, I returned to the motel one last time, armed with everything I had learned. As night fell, I approached room 13 with a mix of fear and resolve. The door stood open, the room dark and silent. Waiting, I stepped inside, feeling the weight of Emily's presence. I sat on the bed, holding a candle and a picture of Emily, hoping to offer some comfort to her restless spirit. "Emily," I whispered, my voice trembling, "I know what happened to you. I want to help you find peace." For what felt like an eternity, nothing happened. The room remained still, the candle flickering in the cold air. But then, a soft voice echoed through the silence. "Thank you," it whispered, the words barely audible. "Thank you for letting me in." I looked around, searching for the source of the voice, but the room was empty. The message had already appeared on the mirror, written in blood, and now it felt like it was saying goodbye. A sense of warmth and relief washed over me, the oppressive presence lifting. As I left the motel, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon, I felt a sense of closure. Emily Turner's spirit had found peace, her tragic story finally acknowledged and honored. The curse of room 13 seemed to have lifted, the motel no longer a place of sorrow but a testament to compassion and understanding. Driving away from Willow Creek Motel, the memory of that night faded, replaced by a sense of accomplishment and relief. I knew that some mysteries of the world remain unsolved, but sometimes, all it takes is a willingness to listen and help those who are lost. Years have passed since that fateful night, and I continue my travels. The open road my constant companion. But every now and then, when a storm rages outside and the road stretches endlessly ahead, I think back to room 13 and the woman who never left. It serves as a reminder that even in the darkest of places, there is hope, and that sometimes, reaching out with kindness can bridge the gap between the living and the dead. And so, as I navigate the highways and byways, I carry with me the story of Emily Turner, a haunting tale of tragedy and redemption that reminds me of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown. The memory of her smile and the words on the mirror linger, a testament to the power of empathy and the enduring connection between souls, both living and departed. In the quiet moments of the night, when the road is deserted and the wind whispers through the trees, I sometimes catch a glimpse of a figure standing by a distant motel, a silent guardian watching over the lonely traveler. It's a sight that sends a chill down my spine, but also a sense of gratitude for the chance to help, to make a difference, and to believe that even in the vastness of the night, we are never truly alone. Story number 2. The Woman in the Mirror. I've always believed that the road holds secrets, stories etched into the asphalt, whispered by the wind through the trees, and hidden within the walls of the motels that dot the lonely highways. As a truck driver, those motels became my temporary homes, each one with its own unique charm and history. But nothing could have prepared me for what my wife and I encountered one bitterly cold winter night at the old Maplewood Motel. It was December, and the snow had started falling early, turning the landscape into a pristine blanket of white. My wife, Laura, and I had been driving for hours, the miles stretching endlessly ahead of us. The heater in our rig was barely keeping the chill at bay, and the promise of a warm bed and a hot meal was all we could think about. When the neon sign of Maplewood Motel flickered into view, a beacon of hope amidst the storm, relief washed over us. We pulled into the parking lot, the tires crunching on the fresh snow. The motel itself was a relic from another era, whitewashed walls with peeling paint, a faded welcome mat that read, "Open 24 hours," and a handful of other cars parked haphazardly around the building. An old-fashioned desk stood near the entrance, manned by an elderly woman whose eyes seemed to hold 1,000 untold stories. "Welcome to Maplewood," she greeted us, her voice soft yet carrying an unspoken weight. "How can I help you tonight?" "We need a room for the night," I replied, trying to mask the exhaustion in my voice. "A warm place to stay until the storm passes." She studied us for a moment, her gaze lingering on Laura. "We have rooms available, but I must warn you about room number 13. It's unusual. Some say it's cursed. Others believe it holds the memories of those who've never left." Laura, always the curious one, raised an eyebrow. "Cursed? That sounds like something out of a ghost story." The woman nodded slowly. "Perhaps, if you're comfortable with it. Room 13 is open, but take heed. Some guests never want to leave." I exchanged a glance with Laura. "We're fine with whatever room is available. Can we take number 13? She hesitated, then sighed. "Very well. Room 13 it is. Here are your keys. Make yourselves at home." The corridor leading to room 13 was dimly lit, the wallpaper peeling in places and the carpet worn from years of use. We reached the door, its number flickering sporadically in the hallway light. I unlocked it and stepped inside, the warmth of the room a stark contrast to the cold outside. Laura immediately noticed something odd about the bathroom mirror. "Look," she whispered, pointing to the mirror. "There are smudged fingerprints all over it, like someone just touched it." I glanced at it, nodding. "Probably just condensation from the shower. I'll wipe it off." We settled into the room, trying to shake off the eerie feeling that lingered in the air. Laura went to the bathroom to freshen up, while I unpacked a few things from my bag. The night was quiet, the only sounds the wind howling outside and the occasional drip of melting snow. Hours passed uneventfully until midnight, when Laura awoke suddenly, her eyes wide with fear. "Honey, wake up." she whispered urgently. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes. What is it? She pointed to the bathroom mirror, her voice trembling. There's someone there. A woman. Standing behind me. I turned to look, but the room was empty. Are you sure? She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. Yes, I saw her. She was just standing there, watching me. I approached her cautiously, trying to reassure her. Maybe it's just your imagination. Laura, we've been on the road for hours. The cold can play tricks on the mind. But Laura wasn't convinced. No, it felt real. I could see her eyes. So sad. Determined to put her at ease. I took her hand and led her back to bed. Let's try to get some more sleep. It's just the storm messing with us. She nodded reluctantly, pulling the covers up to her chin. But the unease lingered, making it hard to fall back asleep. The next morning, we awoke to a serene winter landscape. The storm had passed, leaving behind a blanket of untouched snow. I decided to check the bathroom mirror again, wanting to ensure Laura was all right. As I approached, my heart skipped a beat. There, written in what looked like dried blood, were the words, "Thank you for letting me in." I froze, my mind racing to make sense of the message. Laura stood nearby, her eyes wide with fear. What does it mean? She whispered. Before I could respond, the bathroom mirror began to shimmer, the surface rippling like water. A figure emerged, a woman with pale skin and long, tangled hair, her eyes hollow and red from years of sorrow. She reached out towards us, her presence cold and unearthly. We need to remember, she whispered, her voice echoing through the room. Help us find peace. Terrified, I backed away, trying to rationalize what we were witnessing. Laura, we need to leave. Now. But as we turned to exit the room, the door slammed shut, trapping us inside. The temperature plummeted, our breaths visible in the frigid air. The woman's apparition loomed closer, her eyes piercing into our souls. Remember our stories, she pleaded. Help us tell our truths. Desperation set in as we searched for a way out. But the room seemed to stretch infinitely, the walls closing in around us. The mirror's surface rippled again, revealing images of past tragedies, the lives lost at Maplewood Motel. Stories of sorrow and unfinished business that had anchored their spirits to the mortal realm. Realizing the depth of their anguish, I reached out to her, my voice breaking. Tell us what happened. We want to help. Her expression softened, the torment in her eyes giving way to a flicker of hope. They never listened, she said, her voice barely audible. We were forgotten, our stories untold. Help us remember, so we can move on. Determined to assist, Laura and I vowed to uncover the motel's hidden history, to honor the memories of those who had been lost. Over the following weeks, we delved into old records, interviewing former employees and digging through archives to piece together the motel's dark past. We discovered that Maplewood Motel had been the site of numerous tragedies, accidents, disappearances, and mysterious deaths that had been swept under the rug. Room 13, in particular, had a grim history. It was the room where many guests had met their untimely ends, their spirits unable to find peace due to the silence and neglect surrounding their stories. Armed with this knowledge, we returned to the motel, determined to break the cycle of sorrow. One stormy night, much like the one that had brought us to Maplewood, we prepared to confront the lingering spirits and give them the closure they desperately sought. We set up a small memorial in room 13, placing candles, photographs, and mementos to honor the lost souls. As midnight approached, the room began to fill with a palpable energy, the air thick with anticipation. The bathroom mirror shimmered once more, and the woman from the previous night appeared, her eyes now filled with gratitude. We can finally rest, she whispered, her voice carrying a sense of peace. Thank you for remembering us. One by one, other apparitions emerged, their faces no longer twisted with pain but serene and thankful. The oppressive presence lifted, replaced by a comforting silence that felt like a gentle embrace. As dawn broke, the storm subsided, and the motel felt transformed, no longer a place of tragedy but a sanctuary of remembrance. We had given the spirits what they needed: acknowledgement, compassion, and the promise that their stories would never be forgotten. Driving away from Maplewood Motel, the first light of morning casting a warm glow over the snowy landscape, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. We had bridged the gap between the living and the dead, offering peace to those who had long been forgotten. Years have passed since that fateful night, and life has returned to its usual rhythm. But the memory of Maplewood Motel and the woman in the mirror remains etched in my mind, a testament to the power of empathy and the importance of honoring the past. Every time I pass a secluded motel or hear a whisper in the night, I'm reminded of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown, and the enduring connection between souls, both living and departed. Sometimes, during a particularly quiet night, I catch a glimpse of a figure in a distant motel's window, a silent sentinel watching over weary travelers. It serves as a haunting reminder that even in the most ordinary places, extraordinary and tragic tales lie hidden, waiting for someone to listen and help them find their way home. And so, as I continue my endless journey on the open road, I carry with me the story of Maplewood Motel, a story of loss, remembrance, and the eternal bond between those who seek peace and those who offer a helping hand. It's a story that whispers through the windswept highways, reminding me that sometimes the greatest mysteries lie not in the destinations we seek, but in the echoes of the past that accompany us on our way. Story number 3. Children's laughter in the night. I've always enjoyed the solitude that comes with driving through remote mountain roads, the endless expanse of snow-covered peaks, the crisp winter air, and the quiet hum of my truck's engine provided a sense of peace that I rarely found in the chaos of daily life. But that December night at Whispering Pines Motel was unlike any other journey I'd undertaken. It was nearing midnight, and the temperature had plummeted well below freezing. My rig had been hauling freight across the country for weeks, and exhaustion was beginning to set in. The promise of a warm bed and a hot meal was all I could think about as I navigated the winding roads that led to the motel nestled in a secluded valley. The motel itself was a relic from a bygone era, wooden sign creaking in the wind, lights flickering intermittently, and a single parking lot that seemed to stretch endlessly into the darkness. As I pulled into the gravel driveway, the snowflakes danced around my windshield, obscuring my view of the surroundings. The old building stood stoic against the biting cold, its windows reflecting the pale moonlight. I approached the front desk, the cold biting at my cheeks despite the heater's best efforts. The attendant, a middle-aged man with weary eyes and a stooped posture, looked up from his paperwork. "Welcome to Whispering Pines," he greeted me, his voice raspy from years of coughing. "How can I help you tonight?" "Room for the night," I replied, my voice sounding rough from lack of sleep. "Something warm to sleep in." He nodded, sliding a keycard across the counter. "Room 13, if you don't mind. It's been empty for a while." I raised an eyebrow, recalling the countless superstitions surrounding the number 13. "Does room 13 have a bad reputation or something?" The attendant hesitated, his eyes briefly darting to the door behind me as if expecting something, or someone, to emerge. "Well, it's unusual. Some say strange things happen there, especially on cold winter nights like this. But it's just an old room. Nothing to worry about." I chuckled nervously, dismissing his warning. "I'm not one to believe in ghost stories. I'll take it." He offered a faint smile, returning to his paperwork. "Suit yourself. If you need anything, just let me know." The corridor leading to room 13 was dimly lit, the wallpaper peeling in places and the carpet worn thin from years of use. I reached the door, its number flickering intermittently in the hallway light. Unlocking it, I stepped inside, immediately noticing the oppressive silence that seemed to engulf the room. The bed was neatly made, the furniture old but functional, and the window framed a view of the snow-covered landscape outside. I set down my bags and decided to freshen up before settling in for the night. The bathroom was small, with a cracked mirror above the sink and a shower that had seen better days. As I splashed some water on my face, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Back in the room, I tried to ignore the unease gnawing at me. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulling out a book to distract myself. The night was quiet, the only sounds the wind howling outside and the occasional drip of melting snow. Hours passed uneventfully until midnight, when a faint sound jolted me awake, a soft, melodic laughter echoing through the hallway. My heart raced as I strained to listen, the sound growing slightly louder, more distinct. It sounded like children, their giggles carrying an unsettling undertone. I sat up, my eyes darting to the window, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. The laughter continued, rhythmic and deliberate, each laugh sending a chill down my spine. Trying to rationalize it, I grabbed my flashlight and cautiously approached the door, the beam cutting through the darkness. As I opened the door, the corridor was bathed in the dim glow of the overhead lights. There, at the far end of the hallway, a group of small footprints were etched into the freshly fallen snow, leading toward a locked room at the end. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the footprints, the laughter still lingering in my ears. Determined to uncover the source, I followed the trail, my flashlight bouncing erratically with each step. The footprints were small, barely noticeable against the pristine snow, yet unmistakably leading to room 13. I reached the door, placing my hand on the cold metal handle. It was locked, the keycard still in my pocket. "Hello," I called out softly, my voice betraying my nervousness. "Is someone there?" Silence. Only the sound of the wind and the distant laughter remained. I glanced back the way I came, seeing no sign of anyone else in the corridor. My mind raced, trying to piece together what I was witnessing. Could it be a prank? Or something more sinister? Summoning my courage, I decided to knock on the door. "Room 13. Open up. It's me. Just a guest." No response. The laughter ceased abruptly, replaced by an oppressive silence that seemed to press in from all sides. Frustrated and unnerved, I took a step back, my mind struggling to make sense of the situation. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of movement in the reflection of a nearby window. A fleeting shadow, almost like a child, disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. My heart pounded in my chest, the realization dawning that there was something or someone lurking in the shadows. Returning to the room, I tried to shake off the fear, but the unease lingered like a thick fog. I decided to call the attendant, hoping to get some answers. Picking up the phone on the bedside table, I dialed the number he had given me earlier. The line was dead, a single tone filling the silence. Determined to find out more, I ventured back to the front desk, the hallway seeming longer and darker than before. The attendant was nowhere to be seen, the desk cluttered with old paperwork and a few forgotten brochures. I approached cautiously, searching for any sign of life, but the room was empty. Panicking, I grabbed my phone and tried calling him again, but the call wouldn't connect. I glanced around the lobby, my eyes settling on the security camera feeds mounted on the wall. The screens displayed various angles of the motel, but one camera focused on room 13, showing the door locked and the hallway empty. Confused and terrified, I decided to leave, eager to forget the unsettling experience of the night. As I walked back to my room, the laughter returned, this time louder and more insistent. It seemed to come from all around me, echoing through the halls and reverberating in my mind. Back in the room, I sat on the bed, trying to calm my racing thoughts. The clock ticked loudly in the silent room, each second dragging on painfully. The laughter had faded, but the sense of being watched remained, an invisible presence pressing down on me. Determined to get some rest, I closed my eyes, hoping that sleep would erase the fear. But sleep eluded me, replaced by vivid nightmares of children playing in the snow, their faces pale and eyes hollow. their laughter a haunting melody that refused to fade. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a tranquil winter landscape. Exhausted, I decided to leave the motel, eager to put the terrifying night behind me. As I packed my bags, Laura joined me, concern etched on her face. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, noticing the fear still lingering in my eyes. "I'm fine," I replied, forcing a smile. "Just a rough night." As we drove away, I glanced back at the motel, its windows reflecting the morning sun like dark, empty eyes. The memory of the night haunted me, the laughter and the footprints etched into my mind. Weeks later, unable to shake the experience, I decided to return to Whispering Pines Motel, hoping to uncover the truth behind the eerie events. Speaking with locals and digging through old records, I discovered a tragic history that explained the motel's dark reputation. 20 years ago, a family of 3 had checked into room 13 during a severe winter storm. The parents and their young daughter had been stranded, seeking refuge from the relentless snow. But the night took a horrific turn when the family was brutally murdered, their bodies never found. The motel owner had tried to cover up the incident, but whispers of the tragedy persisted. Stories of restless spirits haunting the corridors. Armed with this knowledge, I returned to the motel with Laura, determined to give the family's spirits the closure they deserved. One stormy night, much like the one that had brought us there, we set up a small memorial in the lobby, lighting candles and placing photos of the family on the front desk. As midnight approached, the familiar laughter began, softer this time, tinged with sorrow instead of menace. The footprints reappeared, leading toward room 13, but the atmosphere felt different, less threatening, more filled with longing. Standing by the door, I addressed the spirits directly. "We're here to help. We know what happened to you. Let us honor your memory and help you find peace." The air grew colder, the candles flickering as if responding to our plea. Slowly, the presence of the family manifested before us, ghostly figures of a husband, wife, and young girl, their expressions filled with sadness and yearning. "We've been waiting for someone to remember us." The father's voice echoed softly. "Our lives were taken, our stories untold. Help us find peace." Moved by their plight, Laura and I spent the night recounting their story, sharing the truth of their tragic end. We promised to honor their memory, to ensure that their suffering would not be forgotten. As dawn broke, the atmosphere in the motel shifted, the oppressive presence lifted, replaced by a sense of calm and gratitude. The spirits of the family smiled gently, their forms beginning to fade into the morning light. "Thank you," the mother whispered, her voice filled with relief. "Thank you for remembering us." With that, the room felt lighter, the haunting presence finally at peace. We watched as the last of the spirits vanished, leaving behind a serene silence that felt like a gentle embrace. Driving away from Whispering Pines Motel, the memory of that night lingered, a testament to the power of empathy and the importance of honoring the past. Laura and I continued our travels, the open road stretching endlessly ahead. But the story of room 13 remained etched in our minds, a haunting reminder that some places hold secrets best remembered, and some souls seek peace beyond the veil of our understanding. Years have passed since that fateful encounter, and life has returned to its usual rhythm. But every time a winter storm rolls in or the snow begins to fall, I find myself thinking back to Whispering Pines Motel and the family who never left. Their story serves as a haunting reminder that even in the most ordinary places, extraordinary and tragic tales lie hidden, waiting for someone to listen and help them find their way home. And so, as I continue my solitary journey through the endless highways, the memory of room 13 remains a ghostly echo in the silence of the night, a story of loss, remembrance, and the eternal bond between the living and the departed. Story number 4. The cordless phone. I've always been a skeptic when it comes to the supernatural. Years on the road as a truck driver have taught me to rely on logic and reason. navigating through countless lonely nights with nothing but the hum of my engine and the vast expanse of dark highways as my companions. But that winter night at the old Blackwood Motel changed everything I thought I knew about reality. It was late December, and the air was biting cold, with snow piling high along the narrow mountain road that led to Blackwood Motel. My rig had been giving me trouble for days, the heater barely keeping up with the relentless winter chill. Exhausted and desperate for warmth, I decided to pull into the nearest motel I could find. The sign above the entrance flickered weakly, its once vibrant letters now faded and barely legible against the heavy snowfall. The motel itself was a relic from another era. Whitewashed walls with peeling paint, a rusty bench in the lobby, and a few dimly lit rooms lining the corridor. The front desk was manned by an elderly man whose eyes held a mix of weariness and unspoken sorrow. "Welcome to Blackwood," he greeted me, his voice gravelly from years of dealing with weary travelers. "How can I help you tonight?" "I need a room for the night," I replied, shivering despite my thick jacket. "Something warm until the storm passes." He glanced at the empty corridor, then back at me. "We don't usually have phones in the rooms," he said, pushing a map of the area toward me. "But I can make an exception. Room 13 is available, though some say it's haunted." I laughed nervously, dismissing his comment as an attempt to scare me. "Haunted? Really? I'm not one to believe in ghost stories." He sighed, handing me the key. "Suit yourself. Just be careful if you decide to use the phone." Grateful for the room, I made my way down the hallway to room 13. The door creaked as I unlocked it, revealing a small, sparsely furnished space with a single bed, a wooden dresser, and a classic rotary phone sitting on the nightstand. Oddly, the motel didn't advertise having phones in the rooms, which made the phone's presence even more unsettling. I placed my bags down and decided to freshen up before calling it a night. As I entered the bathroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The mirror above the sink was slightly fogged, and a faint layer of dust covered the countertop. Shaking off the unease, I splashed some water on my face and returned to the room. Settling onto the bed, I tried to relax, pulling out a book to distract myself from the storm raging outside. The wind howled against the windows, and the heater struggled to keep the room warm. Hours passed without incident until the clock struck 2 in the morning. A soft click echoed through the room, followed by the gentle ringing of the rotary phone. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't expecting any calls, especially not in this remote location. Curious and a bit apprehensive, I reached out and lifted the receiver. At first, there was nothing but static, the sound of rain tapping against the window panes. But then, faintly, I heard it, a whisper, barely audible over the noise. "Don't sleep. They're coming." I froze, the blood draining from my face. My logical mind raced to explain it, perhaps a neighbor playing a prank, or interference from a nearby radio. But Blackwood Motel was the only place around, and the attendant had assured me there were no other rooms occupied. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. "Is someone there?" There was no response, only the persistent whisper. I glanced around the room, searching for the source, but saw nothing unusual. The only thing out of place was the rotary phone itself, sitting there on the nightstand like a relic from a bygone era. Gathering my courage, I decided to hang up and put the phone away. As I turned to place the receiver back, the room seemed to grow colder, the air thick with an oppressive presence. The shadows in the corners of the room deepened, and I felt eyes watching me from the darkness. Panic set in as I realized I wasn't alone. I grabbed my phone and tried to call the front desk, but there was no signal. My heart pounded in my chest as the realization dawned on me. I was trapped, cut off from any help. Desperate, I reached out to the rotary phone again, hoping to communicate with whoever or whatever was on the other end. The whisper returned, clearer this time. "Don't sleep. They're coming." I backed away from the phone, my mind racing. The words echoed in my head, a haunting warning that left me shivering with fear. I decided to investigate. cautiously approaching the nightstand. As I leaned closer, the phone began to ring again, the sound piercing the silence of the room. This time, the whisper was joined by a series of soft, childlike giggles, growing louder and more sinister. I could feel the temperature dropping, my breath visible in the icy air. The shadows in the room seemed to writhe and move, taking on a life of their own. "Don't sleep, they're coming," the voice repeated, now layered with multiple whispers, as if a crowd was speaking in unison. Terrified, I turned to run, but the door slammed shut in my face, trapping me inside. The laughter grew louder, morphing into maniacal chortles that filled the room with an overwhelming sense of dread. I could see fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures moving just beyond the edge of my vision. Their presence felt more than seen. I backed into a corner, my mind scrambling for answers. Who were these spirits? And why were they haunting this room? The front desk attendant's words echoed in my mind. Room 13 was cursed. But what did that mean? Summoning every ounce of courage, I forced myself to face the horrors around me. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice shaking but determined. For a moment, there was nothing but silence, the laughter fading into the background. Then, the whispers began again, softer this time, almost pleading. "Help us. Remember us." Understanding dawned on me. These spirits weren't here to harm me. They were trapped, seeking someone to remember their stories, to acknowledge their existence. I felt a surge of empathy, the fear now mingling with a deep sense of responsibility. "I'll help you," I promised, my voice firm. "Tell me what I need to do." The room began to change, the oppressive darkness lifting as if responding to my vow. The shadowy figures became clearer, revealing the forms of a family, parents and a young child, each with eyes full of sorrow and longing. Their tragic story unfolded before me, a tale of loss and forgotten memories that had bound their spirits to this place. Years ago, a family had sought refuge from a winter storm at Blackwood Motel. Room 13 was the only available, and what should have been a night of warmth and safety turned into a nightmare. An accident had occurred, details murky and shrouded in mystery, leaving the family dead and their spirits trapped in the very room they had sought shelter in. Realizing the depth of their suffering, I knew I had to act. Over the following days, I immersed myself in researching the motel's history, piecing together fragments of the past to honor the family's memory. I spoke with local historians, delved into old newspaper archives, and even found old photographs that brought their story to life. Armed with this knowledge, I returned to Room 13, determined to give the family the closure they deserved. As I entered the room, the atmosphere was serene, the shadows replaced by a peaceful glow. The spirits of the family appeared once more, their expressions now filled with gratitude rather than sorrow. "Thank you for remembering us," the mother whispered, her voice gentle and filled with relief. "You've given us peace." One by one, the spirits began to fade, their forms dissipating into the morning light. The room felt lighter, the oppressive presence lifted as if a heavy burden had been removed. The rotary phone on the nightstand remained silent, its purpose fulfilled. As I left the motel, the first rays of dawn breaking over the horizon, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment and peace. I had bridged the gap between the living and the dead, offering solace to restless souls who had been forgotten by time. Driving away from Blackwood Motel, the snow still falling gently, I reflected on the night's events. The experience had shaken my skepticism, teaching me that some mysteries lie beyond the realm of logic and reason. It reminded me that compassion and understanding can transcend the boundaries between life and death, offering a path to peace for those who are lost. Years have passed since that fateful night, and I continue my journeys with a deeper appreciation for the unseen forces that inhabit our world. Sometimes, when the night is particularly cold and the roads are empty, I think back to Room 13 and the family I helped find peace. Their story serves as a haunting reminder that even in the most ordinary places, extraordinary and tragic tales lie hidden, waiting for someone to listen and remember. And so, as I navigate the endless highways, the memory of that night remains a ghostly echo in my mind, a testament to the power of empathy and the enduring connection between the living and the departed. Blackwood Motel stands as a beacon of hope, a place where forgotten stories are remembered, and restless spirits find the peace they so desperately seek. In the quiet moments of the night, when the wind whispers through the trees and the snow blankets the world in silence, I'm reminded that we are never truly alone. The echoes of the past linger in the shadows, waiting for someone to acknowledge their existence and offer a helping hand. And in those moments, I find solace in knowing that sometimes the most profound connections are forged in the darkness, between those who remember and those who seek to be remembered. Story number 5. The non-existent receptionist. I've always prided myself on being a rational man. As a long-haul truck driver, logic and practicality have been my guiding lights through countless lonely nights on the road. But nothing could have prepared me for what unfolded one bitterly cold winter night at the secluded Whispering Pines Motel. It was December, and a relentless snowstorm had engulfed the highway, reducing visibility to mere feet ahead. My rig, an old freightliner that had seen better days, was struggling against the biting cold. The heater was barely keeping the cabin warm, and the windshield wipers were no match for the thick snow pelting my windows. Exhausted and desperate for shelter, I decided to pull into the nearest motel I could find. The motel appeared out of nowhere, a solitary beacon of light amidst the whiteout. The sign, Whispering Pines Motel, flickered intermittently, casting an eerie glow against the swirling snow. The building was modest, with a single-story structure and a covered parking lot that seemed deserted. I parked beside the lone pump, the gravel crunching under my tires, and approached the entrance. Inside, the warmth was immediate and inviting. The lobby was sparsely furnished, with a worn wooden desk at the center and a couple of mismatched chairs placed haphazardly around it. The decor was outdated, with floral wallpaper peeling at the edges and a faded rug that had clearly seen better days. Behind the desk stood the receptionist, a middle-aged woman with a kind smile and tired eyes. She looked up as I entered, her demeanor welcoming despite the late hour. "Welcome to Whispering Pines," she greeted me, her voice soft and soothing. "How can I assist you tonight?" I nodded, shaking off the remnants of the storm. "I need a room for the night. It's freezing out there." "Of course," she replied, reaching for a keychain that dangled from her neck. "Room 13 is available. It's our oldest room, but it's clean and comfortable." I glanced at the key she handed me, then back at the empty lobby. "Thank you. I'll take room 13. She smiled warmly. "Here's your key. If you need anything, feel free to call us from the phone in your room." "Thanks," I said, trying to shake off the lingering unease. Room 13 had always been considered unlucky by my superstitious friends, but I dismissed it as mere folklore. I made my way down the hallway, the carpet muffling my footsteps, and unlocked the door to room 13. The room was small but tidy, with a single bed covered in a thick comforter, a wooden dresser, and a classic rotary phone perched on the nightstand. The window framed a picturesque view of the snow-covered landscape, the storm now less fierce but still relentless. I set down my bags and decided to freshen up before trying to get some rest. The bathroom was compact, with a cracked mirror above the sink and a shower that had seen better days. As I splashed some water on my face, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air felt colder here, and the silence was almost oppressive. Shaking it off, I returned to the room, turning on the lamp and sinking into the bed. Hours passed uneventfully until the clock struck 2 in the morning. I was jolted awake by a faint tapping sound, rhythmic and deliberate. My heart raced as I listened intently. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, echoing through the silent room. I sat up, my eyes darting to the window. Nothing. The storm had subsided, leaving behind a serene but eerie calm. Probably just the wind, I muttered to myself, trying to rationalize the noise. but the tapping persisted, each knock sending a chill down my spine. Unable to ignore it any longer, I grabbed my flashlight and cautiously approached the door. Taking a deep breath, I reached out and opened it, the beam of light cutting through the darkness of the hallway. The corridor was empty, the only sign of life the distant hum of the motel's aging air conditioning. Confused, I stepped back into the room, only to find that the tapping had ceased. Relieved yet unsettled, I decided to check the phone, thinking it might be a malfunction. As I picked up the receiver, the line was dead, a single tone filling the silence. Puzzled, I hung up and glanced around the room once more. That's when I noticed it. A faint smudge on the mirror in the bathroom, as if someone had pressed their hand against it. My heart pounded as I approached, staring at the distorted imprint that looked eerily like a fingerprint. "Get a grip. It's just stress," I whispered, trying to calm myself, but the unease lingered, making it hard to fall back asleep. I turned off the lamp and lay back down, pulling the comforter over me tightly. The tapping returned, louder this time, followed by soft whispers that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. "Help us. Remember us." I bolted upright, my mind racing with fear and confusion. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. Silence. The room was still, the oppressive presence pressing in from all sides. I grabbed my phone and tried to call the front desk, but there was no signal. Panic surged through me as I realized I was alone, trapped in this haunted motel room with no way to reach out for help. Determined to find answers, I decided to explore the motel the next day. But for now, sleep was elusive, and the whispers kept me awake, each word a haunting reminder that something was terribly wrong. The morning sun broke through the storm clouds, casting a weak light through the curtains. Exhausted, I packed my bags and made my way to the front desk, the events of the night still vivid in my mind. The receptionist was gone. The desk was cluttered with old brochures and a single, unused phone. I glanced around, searching for any sign of her, but the lobby was empty. Puzzled and unnerved, I approached the door once more, deciding to see if the receptionist had simply stepped out. But the door was locked, the key stuck in the lock with no sign of her ever having been there. I turned to check the security cameras, hoping to find some clue about her disappearance. In the back office, the monitors flickered to life, displaying various angles of the motel. I rewound the footage to the previous night, watching as I entered and interacted with the receptionist. She handed me the key, smiled warmly, and directed me to room 13. But as the night unfolded, the cameras showed nothing, no movement, no signs of life beyond my own presence in the lobby. Frustrated, I reviewed the footage again, noting that there was no record of her ever leaving the desk. It was as if she had never existed, leaving me with more questions than answers. The motel's eerie emptiness seemed to mock my confusion, the walls holding onto their secrets tightly, determined to uncover the truth. I delved into the history of Whispering Pines Motel. Late-night research and conversations with locals revealed a dark past. Years ago, a series of unexplained disappearances had plagued the motel, each one involving guests vanishing without a trace. Room 13 had become infamous, rumored to be cursed, a portal to another realm where the lost souls of the past still lingered. The stories spoke of restless spirits, trapped between worlds, unable to move on due to unresolved tragedies. The receptionist, it seemed, was one of them, forever bound to the motel, guiding unsuspecting travelers to their doom. The smudge on the mirror, the tapping, the whispers, all signs that I had inadvertently awakened a long-forgotten curse. Armed with this knowledge, I knew I had to break the cycle, returning to room 13 with a newfound purpose. I prepared to confront the spirits that haunted Whispering Pines, equipped with candles, photographs, and a heartfelt plea for peace. I set up a small memorial in the room, honoring the lives lost and seeking closure for their restless souls. As midnight approached once more, the air grew heavy with anticipation. The room felt colder, the shadows deeper. I sat at the bed, lighting the candles and placing the photos before me. "I'm sorry for what happened," I whispered. "Please, let us remember and help you find peace." The temperature dropped sharply, my breath visible in the icy air. The whispers returned, softer this time, filled with longing rather than fear. "Remember us, help us." A figure materialized in the mirror, the receptionist's spectral form standing before me. Her eyes, once warm and inviting, now held a deep sorrow. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice echoing through the room. "You've remembered us. Now, we can rest." One by one, other apparitions emerged, ghostly figures of past guests, their faces etched with pain and longing. They gathered around the memorial, their presence no longer menacing but serene. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a sense of calm and gratitude. As dawn broke, the spirits began to fade, their forms dissolving into the morning light. The room felt lighter, the curse finally broken. The receptionist smiled one last time before disappearing, leaving behind a room that no longer held the weight of tragedy. Driving away from Whispering Pines Motel, the first rays of sunlight breaking through the storm clouds, I felt a profound sense of relief. The nightmares had ended, the spirits had found peace, and the motel stood as a testament to the power of remembrance and compassion. Years have passed since that fateful night, and life has returned to its usual rhythm. But the memory of Whispering Pines Motel remains etched in my mind, a haunting reminder that some places hold secrets best remembered, and that empathy can bridge the gap between the living and the dead. Every time a storm rolls in or I pass a lonely motel on a desolate highway, I think back to that night and the spirits I helped find peace. In the quiet moments of the night, when the road stretches endlessly ahead and the wind whispers through the trees, I'm reminded that we are never truly alone. The echoes of the past linger in the shadows, waiting for someone to listen and remember. And in those moments, I find solace in knowing that sometimes the most profound connections are forged in the darkness, between those who seek peace and those who offer a helping hand. Whispering Pines Motel stands as a beacon of hope amidst the snow-covered landscape, a place where forgotten stories are honored, and restless spirits find the peace they so desperately seek. And as I continue my solitary journey through the endless highways, I carry with me the lessons learned from that haunted night, lessons of empathy, remembrance, and the enduring bond between the living and the departed. Story number 6. The Shaking Bed. I've always considered myself a rational person. As a couple who enjoys the tranquility of our mountain cabin, we cherished the peace that comes with escaping the hustle and bustle of city life. Nestled deep in the snowy wilderness, our retreat was the perfect sanctuary for winter evenings spent by the fireplace, sharing stories and dreaming about the adventures that awaited us. But one frigid December night turned our haven into a living nightmare, challenging everything I thought I knew about reality. It was a typical winter night, the kind where the world outside is cloaked in silence, broken only by the whisper of the wind and the occasional howl of a distant wolf. My wife, Emily, and I had just settled into bed after a hearty dinner, the warmth from the oven still lingering in the air. The fire crackled softly, casting dancing shadows across the room, creating an atmosphere of serene comfort. As I lay there, savoring the moment of peace, a sudden, violent tremor shook the cabin. The bed beneath us began to convulse uncontrollably, throwing me and Emily from side to side. My heart raced as fear took hold. Was this an earthquake? We live in a region prone to avalanches, but earthquakes are rare. I grabbed Emily, trying to steady her trembling form. "Stay calm," I whispered, attempting to mask the panic in my voice. "It's probably just a minor tremor." But as the shaking intensified, it became clear that something was terribly wrong. The walls groaned under the strain, the windows rattled violently, and the very foundation of our sanctuary seemed to crumble around us. Desperate to understand what was happening, I forced myself to my feet, navigating through the chaos to inspect our surroundings. The shaking subsided as abruptly as it had begun, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. I turned to find Emily shaking, her eyes wide with fear. "What was that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," I replied, my mind racing to piece together the events. "Let's check the house." We moved cautiously through the cabin, every creak and groan of the old wood heightening our anxiety. To our astonishment, everything appeared untouched. The furniture was in place, the decorations intact, and there were no signs of damage. Confused and unsettled, we couldn't fathom what had caused the intense shaking. That's when we noticed something peculiar. Our bed wasn't in its usual spot. Instead, it was positioned directly above what used to be the basement, a space we had long ago sealed off after a tragic accident. Memories of that night flooded back. A heavy snowfall, an avalanche that engulfed the cabin, and the unfortunate deaths of our neighbors, the Harris family. The basement had been our neighbors' refuge, a place where they sought shelter from the storm, but it became their tomb. "How did the bed move?" Emily questioned, her fear palpable. "I have no idea," I admitted, feeling a chill run down my spine. "We never moved it like this before." Determined to uncover the truth, we decided to investigate further. I fetched my flashlight while Emily called the local authorities. But given the severity of the storm, help wouldn't arrive until morning. Left with no choice, we delved into the sealed basement, a place that had become synonymous with loss and sorrow. As we descended the creaky stairs, the air grew colder, and the darkness seemed to press in around us. My flashlight flickered, casting long shadows that danced ominously on the walls. The basement was littered with remnants of the Harris family's lives. Old photographs, children's toys, and personal belongings that told a story of sudden, brutal loss. "Why would our bed move like that?" Emily wondered aloud, her voice echoing in the confined space. Before I could respond, a low, mournful wail filled the room, sending shivers down my spine. The sound seemed to emanate from the very walls, a spectral cry of anguish and despair. We froze, unable to comprehend the supernatural occurrence unfolding before us. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted, our breaths visible in the frigid air. A figure materialized before us, a translucent apparition of a woman with hollow eyes and a sorrowful expression. She floated towards us, her presence both haunting and heartbreaking. "Help us," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the howling wind outside. "We can't move on." Emily clutched my arm, her fear evident. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice trembling. The apparition pointed towards a cracked mirror on the wall, reflecting the dim light of my flashlight. In the reflection, we saw the images of the Harris family, their faces etched with pain and longing, forever trapped in the nightmare of that fateful night. "We were trapped," the woman continued, her eyes pleading for understanding. "The avalanche took everything, our home, our lives. We never found peace." Realization dawned on me. The bed's movement wasn't just a random tremor. It was a manifestation of the restless spirits still bound to this place, unable to find closure. The weight of their tragic story pressed heavily upon us, intertwining our lives with theirs in a way we could never have imagined. Determined to help the lost souls find peace, we decided to honor their memory and give them the closure they desperately sought. We spent the following days restoring the basement, cleaning away the remnants of the past, and creating a memorial for the Harris family. We shared their story with the local community, ensuring that their tragic fate would never be forgotten. As we worked, the presence of the Harris spirits began to shift. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a sense of calm and gratitude. The apparitions no longer lingered with sorrow but smiled with peaceful acceptance, their spirits finally able to move on from the pain that had bound them to our home. One night, as the first signs of spring began to thaw the lingering winter chill, we sat by the fireplace, reflecting on the events that had changed our lives forever. The cabin felt warmer, not just from the fire but from the connection we had forged with the Harris family. Their story had become a part of our own, a haunting reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring power of compassion. Driving away from our mountain retreat, the snow now melting and giving way to new growth, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. We had faced the unknown, confronted the supernatural, and helped bring peace to restless spirits. The experience had taught us that some tragedies leave lasting echoes, but with empathy and determination, even the deepest sorrows can find resolution. Years have passed since that unforgettable winter night, and life has returned to its usual rhythm. But the memory of the shaking bed and the Harris family remains etched in my mind, a testament to the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown. Every time a storm rolls in or the snow begins to fall, I'm reminded of the night when reality blurred with the supernatural, and we learned that sometimes helping others can bridge the gap between life and death. In the quiet moments of reflection, I think back to that mountain cabin and the lives we touched. It serves as a haunting reminder that the past never truly dies, but with compassion and remembrance, even the most tragic stories can find their peaceful conclusion. And so, as I continue my journey through life, I carry with me the lessons learned from that winter night, lessons of empathy, resilience, and the enduring connection between souls, both living and departed. Story number 7. The Uninvited Guest. I've always found solace in the open road, as a long-haul truck driver traversing the vast landscapes of Colorado. The solitude of the highway offers a kind of peace that the chaos of everyday life seldom provides. The rhythmic hum of the engine, the endless stretches of highway, and the occasional breathtaking vista are my companions through countless lonely nights. But one winter night at the Whispering Pines Motel turned my sanctuary into a nightmare, challenging everything I thought I knew about reality. It was late December, and the snowstorm had rolled in with a vengeance, blanketing the mountains in a thick layer of white. Visibility was reduced to mere feet, and the biting cold seeped through every crevice of my rig. My heater struggled against the relentless chill, and the windshield wipers were no match for the torrential snow. Exhausted and desperate for shelter, I decided to pull into the nearest motel I could find. The Whispering Pines Motel stood alone on a deserted stretch of highway, its neon sign flickering sporadically against the storm's fury. The building itself was a relic from another era, whitewashed walls with peeling paint, a single-story structure that seemed untouched by time. I parked beside the lone pump, the gravel crunching under my tires, and approached the entrance, shivering despite my heavy jacket. Inside, the warmth was immediate, a stark contrast to the blizzard outside. The lobby was sparsely furnished, with a worn wooden desk at the center and a couple of mismatched chairs placed haphazardly around it. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and something else, something metallic and unsettling. Behind the desk stood the receptionist, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a forced smile. Her name tag read Martha. "Welcome to Whispering Pines," she greeted me, her voice soft yet carrying an unspoken weight. "How can I assist you tonight?" "Room for the night," I replied, trying to mask the exhaustion in my voice. "Something warm to sleep in until the storm passes." She nodded, reaching for a stack of keys. "We have a room available in the back. It's our oldest one, but it's clean and comfortable." I accepted the key, noticing the slight tremor in her hands. "Thanks. Can you tell me more about the motel? It's been a while since I've been through here." Martha's smile faltered for a moment before she regained her composure. "Whispering Pines has been around for decades. It's a quiet place, ideal for drivers like yourself, though some say the nights can be unnerving, if you're not too superstitious. That is." I chuckled nervously, dismissing her comment as an attempt to lighten the mood. "I'm not one to believe in ghost stories." She offered a faint smile, then handed me the key. "Suit yourself. Here's your key for room 13. If you need anything, just let me know." Room 13. The number 13 has always carried a certain superstition with it, a stigma that locals associate with bad luck and unspoken tragedies. But tiredness and the storm's wrath overruled any lingering hesitations, and I made my way down the dimly lit corridor to my room. The door creaked as I unlocked it, revealing a small, neatly kept space. The bed was made with fresh linens. A wooden dresser stood against one wall, and a classic rotary phone sat on the nightstand. The window framed a view of the snow-covered landscape, the storm now less fierce but still relentless. I set down my bags and decided to freshen up before trying to get some rest. As I entered the bathroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The mirror above the sink was slightly fogged, and faint smudges on the glass suggested someone had recently touched it. Shaking off the unease, I splashed some water on my face and returned to the room, turning on the lamp and sinking into the bed. Hours passed uneventfully until midnight, when a faint tapping sound jolted me awake. It was rhythmic and deliberate, like someone gently knocking on the door. My heart raced as I strained to listen, the sound growing slightly louder, more insistent. Probably just the wind, I muttered to myself, trying to rationalize the noise. But the tapping persisted, each knock sending a chill down my spine. Unable to ignore it any longer, I grabbed my flashlight and cautiously approached the door. Taking a deep breath, I reached out and opened it, the beam of light cutting through the darkness of the corridor. The hallway was empty, the only sign of life the distant hum of the motel's aging air conditioning. Confused, I stepped back into the room. The tapping now ceased. Relieved yet unsettled, I decided to check the phone, thinking it might be a malfunction. As I picked up the receiver, the line was dead, a single tone filling the silence. Puzzled, I hung up and glanced around the room once more. That's when I noticed it, a faint smudge on the mirror in the bathroom, as if someone had pressed their hand against it moments before. My blood ran cold as I approached, staring at the distorted imprint that looked eerily like a fingerprint. "Get a grip. It's just stress," I whispered, trying to calm myself, but the unease lingered, making it hard to fall back asleep. I turned off the lamp and lay back down, pulling the covers over me tightly. The tapping returned, louder this time, followed by soft whispers that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. "Help us. Remember us." I bolted upright, my mind racing with fear and confusion. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. Silence. The room was still, the oppressive presence pressing in from all sides. I grabbed my phone and tried to call the front desk, but there was no signal. Panic surged through me as I realized I was alone, trapped in this haunted motel room with no way to reach out for help. Determined to find answers, I decided to explore the motel the next day. But for now, sleep was elusive, and the whispers kept me awake, each word a haunting reminder that something was terribly wrong. The morning sun broke through the storm clouds, casting a weak light through the curtains. Exhausted, I decided to leave, eager to put the terrifying night behind me. As I packed my bags, Martha joined me, concern etched on her face. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, noticing the fear still lingering in my eyes. "I'm fine," I replied, forcing a smile. "Just a rough night." As I walked out to my rig, I glanced back at the motel, its windows reflecting the morning sun like dark, empty eyes. The memory of the night haunted me, the whispers and the smudge on the mirror etched into my mind. Weeks later, unable to shake the experience, I decided to return to Whispering Pines Motel, hoping to uncover the truth behind the eerie events. Speaking with locals and digging through old records, I discovered a dark history that explained the motel's sinister reputation. Years ago, a series of unexplained disappearances had plagued Whispering Pines. Guests would check in, only to vanish without a trace, leaving the motel owner scrambling to cover up the tragedies. Room 13 had been the site of the most recent and brutal incident, a family of 3 who sought shelter during a snowstorm, only to be found dead the next morning, their bodies contorted in unnatural poses. The official report cited a sudden avalanche, but rumors of foul play and supernatural involvement persisted. The stories spoke of restless spirits, trapped between worlds, unable to move on due to unresolved tragedies and the motel's dark secrets. The smudge on the mirror, the tapping, the whispers, it all pointed to the lingering presence of those lost souls still bound to Whispering Pines. Determined to help, I returned to the motel one last time, armed with the knowledge I had uncovered. As night fell and the storm began to brew once more, I approached room 13 with a mix of fear and resolve. The door was unlocked, the room silent and still, the air heavy with anticipation. I set up a small memorial in the room, placing candles, photographs, and notes dedicated to the lost guests. Lighting the candles, I addressed the spirits directly. "I know what happened to you. I'm here to help you find peace." The temperature dropped sharply, my breath visible in the icy air. The room seemed to darken, shadows deepening around me. The whispers returned, now more insistent and urgent. "Help us. Remember us." The apparition of the family materialized before me. Ghostly figures of a husband, wife, and child. Their eyes filled with sorrow and longing. They reached out, their hands passing through the candles without a trace. "We were forgotten." The father's voice echoed softly. "Our stories untold, our lives erased." I continued speaking, recounting the history I had uncovered, sharing their tragic story with the hope of honoring their memory. "You deserve to be remembered. Let me help you tell your stories so you can finally rest." The air grew warmer, the oppressive presence lifting as the spirits seemed to absorb the words. The apparitions began to fade, their forms becoming translucent and serene. The whispers softened into a peaceful murmur, a gentle thank you for finally being acknowledged. As dawn broke, the room felt lighter, the darkness dissipating like mist in the morning sun. The family smiled softly before disappearing, leaving behind a sense of calm and closure that had been absent for so long. Driving away from Whispering Pines Motel, the first rays of sunlight breaking through the clouds, I felt a profound sense of relief and accomplishment. The haunting presence had been lifted, the restless spirits finally finding the peace they had sought for years. Years have passed since that night, and life has returned to its usual rhythm. But the memory of Whispering Pines Motel remains etched in my mind, a haunting reminder that some places hold secrets best remembered, and that compassion can bridge the gap between the living and the dead. Every time a snowstorm rolls in or I find myself driving through a secluded stretch of highway, I think back to room 13 and the family I helped find peace. In the quiet moments of reflection, I realize that the road is not just a path to my destination but a journey through the mysteries that lie hidden in the shadows. Whispering Pines Motel stands as a testament to the enduring power of empathy, the importance of remembering the forgotten, and the belief that even in the most isolated places, there is hope for redemption and closure. And so, as I continue my solitary journey through Colorado's snowy highways, I carry with me the story of Whispering Pines, a story of loss, remembrance, and the eternal bond between those who seek peace and those who offer a helping hand. It serves as a haunting reminder that sometimes the greatest horrors lie not in the supernatural, but in the unspoken tragedies that bind us all.